So, Kenda, in your lecture, you talk about how just the propensity for youth ministers to try to move people toward God. But you also kind of demonstrate that this is something we've always been doing. Can you say a little bit more about where that might show up in the biblical text?
Yeah, well, it's the most natural thing in the world, right? We want our young people to know God, so we want to find a way to move them closer to God. That's common language that we might use, and we knock ourselves out to create experiences that will be moving and would move them towards the holy, and that would have these elaborate kinds of experiences, maybe whether it's camp or whether it's a concert or something, that they would come away feeling like they were really moved close to God. That's kind of like what we are hoping might happen if we admit that. What we fail to think about is that we've been down this path before, and in Scripture that was called the Tower of Babel. People were trying to move closer to heaven then too. What we fail to remember is that we don't move closer to God. God has moved closer to us. And the issue is whether we open ourselves to God's movement towards us or not. And I wonder whether, if we take our cues from the manufactured spectacle that moves people closer towards this transcendent thing. And of course, we've got a whole consumer culture that is built around a manufactured spectacle. And the manufacture, we're neurologically predisposed to want this kind of movement. So of course we can tap into that if we can manufacture spectacle, we can manufacture movement if we want to. But whether we're going to be moved towards God or not is another story. And so one of the things that we talked about was, well, what if we don't take our cues from the spectacle, but what if we take our cues from someone who we don't actually know how she moved towards God? We only know how she responded when she realized God had moved towards her. And so we use the story of Mary with the Magnificat. So we have no idea how she tried to approach God, or even if she did. What we do know is that there was this moment where she believed God had moved towards her, and how she responded. We have this girl who we know waited on the Lord, so she waited. When she was perplexed by this, she went and visited somebody else who also apparently waited on the Lord, so she had this other person who shared in her faith that she could talk about this with. And then she celebrated. She had this song that she sang in celebration of this. So we've got waiting, we've got visiting, we've got singing and celebrating. Those are a little different than manufacturing a big event to kind of move you closer to God. Anyway, so we played around with, okay, well, what does it look like in your ministry if instead of spending all your time trying to construct this elaborate experience that will move kids closer to God, what if we focused on waiting upon God, visiting with others who are lovers of God, and celebrating God's presence even when it's tough and unexpected? It just changes the lens a little bit differently on how we think about approaching God.